The Secret Lake, Chapter 14. The Forgotten Clue. Each day for the next week, the children rose early to look for the moles, but they didn't appear. Stella passed the time composing coded Facebook messages to Hannah and lazing with her music and piles of books in the patches of dappled sunlight on the lawn. Finally, she felt at peace in her new surroundings. She also felt sure that she could meet Emma again soon. Tom, by contrast, grew quickly impatient. He couldn't see his tea inside his chimney, and then he wanted to bring back some other secret clue, some proof that their adventure had really happened. His mood wasn't improved when he started having nightmares about being back in the house with Stella, Emma, and Jack. Each time, without fail, Crawley caught them from behind and locked them in a dark broom cupboard, and it was always at the point when the door swung back to reveal him stroking a long black whip that Tom woke, drenched in sweat and shivering. Charlie Green was usually hovering about in the dream somewhere too, watching everything from a strange distance. About 10 days after the return from the time tunnel, Tom awoke from just such a dream and lay looking around his room and listening to the birds singing outside. Finally, he got out of bed and crossed to his window. He gazed across the sun-drenched lawn and began to wonder, had he and Stella somehow imagined the whole adventure between them? Had their move from Hong Kong affected them in such a strange way? Deep in thought, he dressed himself. He crossed once more to the chimney. Once more, he looked up inside the solid bricks. Slowly, he stood up and sighed. But then, as he turned and found himself staring at the 3 large stones that he had dug up at the beginning of summer, and that now sat lined up at the foot of his bed, a sudden thought struck him, a thought as unexpected as lightning from a clear blue sky. "Stella!" he shouted, bursting into her room. "What?" she said with a scowl. Hannah had left a message saying she thought joining a history club and taking up potholing were the most boring things she could imagine. And by the way, could Stella please write normally? "Follow me," said Tom, holding up his trowel. "I think I've found my proof from the past." Proof? But Tom had already shot out the door with a shake of her head. Stella closed her Facebook page and thundered down the stairs after him. "Tom, what are you talking about?" But her brother, who was tearing full pelt across the lawn, was too breathless to answer. "It's somewhere around here," he shouted, digging at the flower bed in full view of the houses. "Tom, you know you'll be grounded if Charlie Green catches you digging again." I don't care," shouted Tom, now on his hands and knees, flicking up earth in all directions, like a desperate animal. But then, quite suddenly, it appeared almost exactly where he thought it would. With the broadest of smiles, Tom leaned down and with his thumb and forefinger pulled a small battered cloth purse from the soil, the purse he had dug up at the start of the summer and then discarded. "What's that?" said Stella. "Look, it's hers. It's Mrs. Gladstone's coin purse, the one they said was stolen. I thought it was a doll's purse when I dug it up last time." He laid the purse flat in the palm of his hand. "See, there." Stella screwed her eyes up and looked closely at the worn-away cloth. Barely visible were 2 initials. The first she couldn't make out, but the second, if you looked carefully, resembled a very elaborate G. "G for Gladstone," whispered Tom. "Crawley must have thrown it away in the garden and taken the money." "You've been digging up the molehills again." The air filled with an eerie silence. Tom and Stella momentarily froze before turning to meet the dark stare of Charlie Green. Immediately his eyes fell on the purse still lying in the palm of Tom's hand. For a split second, Stella thought his gaze flickered, but then he shifted his stare back to Tom. "Now this really is your last warning, young Tom. Any more digging in this garden and I'll have you grounded." And with an expressionless gaze, he stomped off. "Why, that man always has got it in for me," said Tom crossly. Stella stood curling a lock of her blonde hair around her finger and staring after Charlie. Then she gasped, "Tom, do you think Charlie Green knows about the time tunnel too?" Tom's eyes jumped wide. "Maybe he takes Harry when he goes down it," Stella went on. "No wonder poor Mrs. Moon's dotty." Tom stared into the distance, thinking through his encounters with Charlie. Pieces of complicated jigsaw seemed suddenly to be dropping into place. "You know, there's one thing we could find out more," said Stella brightly. "How's that?" murmured Tom, trying to gather his thoughts. "Mrs. Moon, of course. Charlie's always having cups of tea with her. I think we should pay her a visit." End of chapter 14. Chapter 15 is afternoon tea. All right, bye-bye.